Welcome to the SMC Journal Podcast, the show that's all about software engineering in today's modern IT. We talk a lot about developing software, testing software, tuning software, how AI is being used in software, and how to keep it secure and observe it with observability tools. Pretty much anything that has to do with software, hardware, making it better than it was yesterday, that's what we're about. And I'm your host, Scott Moore. Thanks so much for joining me. We have been talking more and more about security on this show. One of the reasons is because we have a great sponsor in that realm. It's Saltworks Security. I bet you'd want to know more about Saltworks Security, wouldn't you? Let's find out. This podcast is sponsored by Saltworks Security. For almost 10 years, Saltworks has delivered world-class application security services and products designed to help enterprises secure their applications from policy to production in an ever-changing security landscape. They're the makers of SaltMiner, an application security management platform designed by security professionals for security professionals. SaltMiner aggregates and normalizes the issues found by many different solutions and enriches that data with business context. SaltMiner gives team members from the C-suite, security, and development teams the ability to manage their application security program through customizable views. The Saltworks SaltMiner Community Edition is a free penetration testing management and delivery application. It provides teams with custom reporting for potentially thousands of end users, red team support, and the ability to manage new and retesting of engagements. SaltMiner Community Edition also allows teams to enforce both testing methodologies and custom vulnerability databases for consistency in engagement delivery. Check them out today at saltworks.io. And speaking of security, my guest today is a phenomenon. This is a person that I've known for over 25 years. We've worked together at different companies as colleagues. We worked at the same company together, Load Tester Incorporated, did some amazing work together. We've been colleagues again at separate companies. And now he has an illustrious career as a DevSecOps CISO of CISOs. And he is out there on LinkedIn all the time talking about the value of DevSecOps. But he has a background in performance engineering. Now, I know multiple people that are like that I've actually worked with and had at my own company before. But this is one of them. But Tim Chase is very special. He's a very special guest to me because I've just got so much of a rapport with him, and he's doing some great stuff. And I wanted to have him on the show to talk about what it's like to switch over from one career, performance engineering, to application security and cybersecurity in general, and what those two communities are like. And if somebody is actually considering moving into cybersecurity, where do they even start? How do they get that career going? Tim is the perfect person to ask about this. So let's bring Tim onto the show. Hey, Tim Chase, welcome to the SMC Journal Podcast. Very good to have you on the show today.
Hey, Scott, good to see you, and thanks for having me on.
Tim, I have known you for about 25 years probably now. I've lost count how long we've known each other. We've worked together in the same companies, and we've worked together in different companies. We've got a long history, but some people out there may not know how awesome you are. So can you introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I live in Nashville. I work for a company called Lacework, which is a cloud and container security company. And we've been around, I think, about 7 or 8 years now. And what I do is I run a team of field CISOs and field CTOs. So people that have been in the field, very experienced systems engineers, former CISOs that can really focus on kind of the evangelism of our product, but not only our product, but like security in general, right? People who can really kind of talk about how to build security programs, how they've done it, what they've seen work, what they've seen not work, things like that. So we try and position ourselves as industry leaders because we've done that and not really involve ourselves in the aspect of sales.
You are a very interesting individual for my show, for my guest personally, because I know that your roots began in load testing, performance engineering, and we worked together for many years along those lines, and you were very, very good at it. And at some point, you made a career decision to move into AppSec. I remember sort of when that started happening, but it kind of got away from me. All the years have gotten away, but you've been doing this quite a while, and I know that you tout DevSecOps all the time online. Can you talk a little bit about that transition for you, what it was like, and what made you make that decision, and how difficult was that to move from one to another?
Yeah, it actually probably predates us even knowing each other. If I go back even further, so when I first got out of college many years ago, we were still recovering from kind of that dot-com boom. So for graduates like me, jobs were not super easy to find because you have a lot of experienced people that were also needing jobs. And so I took the first job that I could, which was in technology, which was testing. All right, so it was functional testing, performance testing, and automation. And obviously, I kind of went on to really enjoy the performance and the automated stuff more, just because it was more technical. It made bring more, which is what makes it enjoyable for me. At that same time, the company that I work for in Nashville had just gotten their first CISO, and so that was with the time where security was a thing, but most enterprises were just realizing it was a thing, right? But they were focused on the network side. They were focused on kind of that perimeter, and not as much on the applications themselves. And so I said, well, heck, like I'm in here doing performance testing, writing code against the apps. Why don't I just see if they'll let me do some SQL injection testing while I'm in here as well? And so, I started with my little, hacking book on the left, the application on the right, and just started learning, right, and teaching myself. And so that's kind of where it kept, being for the next several years, right? It's just learning until I had the opportunity to go to Nielsen with one of our favorite people, Brian Copeland, right? And I said, yeah, I'll go to Nielsen and work there, but like I really want the opportunity to expand this security thing that I've been doing on and off for years. They said yes, and that's really where it started, right? And so I got the opportunity there to finally pitch it to a CTO to make it a full-time job. So it was one of those things when people say, how did you get from one place to the other? It's because it was something that I wanted to do and I wanted to make happen. So I made it happen, right? And so you have to kind of put you have to be the one to initiate it, not wait for someone to you. So like if it's something that you want to do and you want to make that transition, you just have to figure out the way to do it. Teach yourself through courses, online courses, find a mentor, do it on the side, not be afraid to work extra, to do it on the side to prove that you can do it. And then eventually just kind of wait for your opportunity. And as far as how hard it was to make that transition, it wasn't very hard because I felt like, through the work that we did, I think you and I worked together consulting for, maybe 3-4 years, something like that. We hit it pretty hard. And so technically, like we understood how applications worked, right? We saw whether it was Citrix, whether it was web apps, like we saw all this traffic coming back when we were doing performance testing. So I had that understanding. I just had to also learn this other part of the app, which was the security side of things, right? And so it wasn't that hard of a transition. It really was just having to get that opportunity and find that mentor who can kind of help and teach you the rest of what you want to know. The biggest part and the biggest uplift sometimes is being a little bit afraid of how large security is. I think that was one of the things that when I started making the transition into security, I had seen security maybe as AppSec. And then like when you actually get into security and you realize, oh crap, there's cloud security, there's host security, there's firewall security, there's all sorts of things, right? That can get a little bit of intimidating, but I'm actually, it's not an uncommon way I found out. So one of my friends that we worked with, Vince, who's now doing security at GE, did that same transition at Nielsen, and he went from performance testing to security. I interviewed the CISO of Car Gurus the other day, and she made that same transition years ago where she was doing functional testing and then had the opportunity through risk and analyzing kind of the compliance and risk aspect to make her transition over to security. So
It seems to me that these skill sets that you learn in testing, where, as a developer, you're trying to create something that's going to work. Then we're trying to create something to make it maybe not work. In other words, we're trying to take, for example, on a web application, we're trying to feed that web server a response, or get a response from it, send a request that will make it through with multiple threads to load test it, whatever we're trying to do, and send it different data. But we're not actually doing it as a real user on the browser. We're using lower level APIs and things to do that. So we're kind of fooling it in a way to get the testing done. In the same way, we take that same skill set and say, now I want to take it and start feeding it requests that it was never designed to handle, to see what it's going to do, to see if I can make it do something really cool or uncool, depending on your viewpoint, right? So it's kind of the same skill sets of, like, I almost think of security penetration testing specifically for web is almost like exploratory functional testing. If you've got a really good tester, would you agree with that? Is that the same mentality, or is it something different?
No, it is. It's the same mentality, right? Which I think is why it's such a natural inclination. Is, when you're doing functional testing and exploratory testing, you're just trying to make the app behave in a way that's unexpected. Maybe if you click a button 5 times, will it submit something 5 times, and you charge for it 5 times? Like, that's kind of the functional side. What we want to know is, if I put this, 1,000 character string in a text box and I hit submit, is it going to blow up and give me a bunch of information about the backend that I can then use to exploit with a SQL injection to get access to the entire database, right? It is a lot of times the same premise, just with a different goal.
Yeah. So I know that when you just said security is a big thing, and that was a question I was going to ask you about. When I think of performance, see, I think of the whole gamut of performance. You could just focus on optimizing infrastructure in the cloud, and that's a full-time job for anybody. You could be a front-end performance web tester. This focuses on the browser and the Chrome part of that, the front end piece, not even caring about the databases and stuff on the back end. And then you could do traditional load testing and stress testing against the whole back end, and just follow that whole technology stack. That's just a lot of stuff, and you're not going to learn that in 6 months. I think security is that way, or more so. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, how long does it take somebody to learn just the fundamentals of good security testing?
Man, it can take a long time, because sometimes we look at it too broadly, and we try and learn too much. They want to do vulnerability, they want to do AppSec, they want to do GRC, and it's really impossible to hone in to do one thing really well. I think what some of the that's good if you want to be a CISO. Like, I think you have to have a general understanding and hop around to a couple of different places to understand the whole security program. But I think to be a good pen tester, to do the pen testing, the red teaming, things like that, you have to kind of you have to be really specialized, right? Because you have to know maybe different architectures, maybe some different languages, be really good at scripting. And so it is like, you have to know the back end and the front end. And so you have to really, it can take a long time to really build up that knowledge base. One of the best pen testers that I know that I hired at one point, he actually came from, a networking space, and he just kept adding new technologies a little bit at a time. He was a networking guy. He added Linux to be where he was one of the best Linux guys I knew. Then he taught himself Python. Then he taught himself PowerShell. And then all of a sudden, like, he's been doing various things for 10 or so years. And I said, well, turn your focus on pen testing. Well, he's already got all this baseline of information that he understands, and it makes him be a fantastic pen tester. So it can really take a lot of time, because there's just so much other knowledge that you have to learn, on top of the fact, like, you can know all of these technologies, but to be a really good pen tester, you also have to know how to leverage what other people have already found, right? Pen testers look at vulnerability databases. They look at streams and Twitter feeds and various places where they talk about hacks on certain technologies, and so they have to keep up to date on all of that as well, so that, like, have like this little toolkit of how they can break in, right? So they don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, if there's a Windows vulnerability already out there, like, why would you try and find it again? Like, they say, we're going to use remote desktop. Remote desktop is open. Let me look over here and see what I've got for remote desktop vulnerabilities that I can try. So, yeah, there's a lot of learning, and it's not something. it's not something you can just pick up. When I ask somebody says, I want to go into cybersecurity, and I say, what do you want to do? I want to be a pen tester. Like, that's a little bit of a flag to me sometimes because a lot of time it has the cool factor, but you can't just turn it on most of the times and be a pen tester, right? So typically, I suggest that they start someplace else in security to get some baseline knowledge, and then build that up and learn, and maybe do pen testing on the side, like find somebody who's really good at it and understand it.
I think a lot of people are wanting to get into that field because there's a shortage, and the pay is really nice because there's a shortage, or there's always a need, especially for good security testers and people in security. Let's talk about those communities. And I realize this is kind of a loaded question and you might be a little bit biased about this, but let's compare not just performance, but the testing and QA community as a whole versus the security community. Even though there's some testing in there, to me, what I'm experiencing as I'm getting more involved in the security space, it's totally different worlds. There's, I guess, extremes on both sides. But it seems to me like if I were to say we're going to have this testing conference in Vegas, for example, you might have a couple of thousand people if it was done really right and you got some really big corporate sponsors maybe behind you. But you have a security conference in Vegas, there's 25,000 people plus at Black Hat, and then another 27 or plus at DEF CON. I mean, this is, why do you think that is? Is it just because security is hot, security is a must have, and maybe testing is now seen as, it's good, but it's not as pertinent right now to security because of the devastation that you can experience by lack of it? I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think testing is maybe not as sexy as it once was. Probably is one of the reasons. Like I remember when I was doing it, like the HP conferences, they were top notch. We had a lot of fun doing those and speaking at those, and when Quality Center and Quick Test and Load Runner and all of those things were kind of out there, and they're the best that was out there. We had a lot of people wanting to do it. It was kind of the modernization of applications, and that was one of the things that they had to do. I think nowadays that's probably seen as something that we know we need to do, but it's more, it's just kind of more routine. Like it's kind of a checkbox sort of thing. And so I think it's harder to build up the excitement around those. And plus, I think a lot of places these days are shifting a little bit toward a DevOps model, for better or for worse. And so a lot of those people who are doing the testing are the ones that are also doing, maybe the developing, or they're kind of more blended. And so there isn't like a specific need for the testing as much. Although I'm not saying that it's not important by any means, because I think if you don't have testing by an independent group of people, I think you're going to run into this problem. But the security community is really interesting. They really, I feel like, enjoy it. They love what they do. They understand the importance, and it's just so hot right now because it's expenditures around security. They're only going up for the most part, even in something like this, where they are trying to do cost savings, but people are still spending quite a bit of money on security. And so the community is just great because we all want to know what each other are doing. We want to know what works. That's why I have lots of great conversations with CISOs every week, and I just ask them, what are you doing for security? What are your priorities? Tell me more about your security program, right? And then on top of that, what I find is really interesting is, there's a lot of them in Vegas. We talk about Black Hat and DEF CON and AWS ones and, all of those. But the interesting ones that I have found is, there are industry specific security conferences that are really well attended as well. Right. So if I just as an example, like FSISAC, right? So that's financial services. They have a cybersecurity conference that's dedicated to financial services, and they have the same ones for healthcare and retail, and they have different ones. But you'll get the people who are competing with each other on a day-to-day basis. The different hospital systems, the different pharmaceutical companies, all there and meeting and talking about what they're seeing and what they're doing for cybersecurity. So it's like out there they're competing, but like we're such a community because we all want to learn from each other to ultimately make the world and the community safer, that like we come together, we take the gloves off and we we just say, what are you doing? What are you doing? What have you seen not work? Right. And I think that's really cool. I think that's why you see such a big interest in the security conferences.
I love that. And it also keeps everybody thinking outside of the box, learning something new. You
Mm-hmm.
always have to think outside of the box. That's the whole part of it.
Always.
We are not going to be in the box to figure out how to hack the box. You have to be outside of it.
Yes. Yes.
So that's
Yes.
cool. So you could have just gone into this career in cybersecurity and been a very good cybersecurity professional, but yet you're also an advocate for this, right? So you've actually got classes. I've seen classes that you've come out with, at least two, maybe on LinkedIn, and you're writing blogs, you're doing all this stuff. So can you kind of talk about some of the stuff that you're out there doing right now and how you're helping promote
Yeah.
DevSecOps?
Yeah. Absolutely. I like talking and educating. That's just one of the things that I like to do. And that goes back a long time ago. I used to do training on HP products. Certified instructor would teach people how to do load runner, all of the things, right? So I've always liked to do it. And one of the cool things that I get to do these days is kind of take that and do it in a different format. So I have two courses on LinkedIn. I've got one on DevSecOps, kind of an intro, and then I have one on continuous application security, where I talk about how to do application security in a DevOps manner. I have a third one that I'm working on right now that's talking about building an application security program. So hopefully, I think that one's due out in spring of next year. So I love doing that kind of stuff and getting the feedback from that, because I think that just helping people do it right. Like I've been doing DevOps and DevSecOps so long that like the tools weren't even ready for it when I first started. Like when I was at Nielsen and we were like, we're going to do DevSecOps, and like none of the tools had APIs, none of them had ways to call it from a pipeline. Like none of that actually existed. So I hired a developer to come on to actually build like this interface between these things to be able to make it work. And so I just want to talk about what I've learned and what I'm seeing. And then I do a lot of LinkedIn stuff as well, just because I think I'm in a little bit of a unique position with my role and the people that I talk to and the community that I have, that I see a lot and I hear a lot, and I just want to hear what other people are seeing, and I want to kind of engage. Like I think the latest, I did a blog on the Cloud Security Alliance for DevOps and some of the benefits of DevSecOps there, right? And I think that was really interesting, because I think ultimately the point that you get out of DevSecOps is one of the big ones is like this community between the security and the developers and the DevOps teams, right? Rather than it being a push and a pull constantly, which you've seen in the past. I want it to be more of a community relationship driven thing. So I talk a lot about that. And then on LinkedIn, been talking a little bit about identity. I just think that identity is one of those mind-boggling security concepts that we have not gotten right in the last 10 years. And why is that? So I'm just kind of exploring that idea a little bit. So I just like hearing what other people have to think, right? I don't have all the answers sometimes, but or anytime really, but I just like hearing what others do in the community. Maybe together we can figure this stuff out.
I completely agree, and sharing it. And back in the day, you remember you wrote one of the first Citrix white papers around load runner for load tester, and I kind of got a little bit of footage in there, but that was one of the more popular white papers for a long time, because you focused on Citrix. We just shared it,
Every once in a while, I still get pinged on that. Like that is in like Japanese or something, and like I'll get pinged by somebody that I just read your Citrix white paper, and I'm like, holy cow! I wish I could say about that.
Welcome to 20 years ago, right?
That's right.
So let's talk about your more recent blog article, and I want to bring that up on the screen while you talk about it, because you're talking about this new research that suggests unseen benefits of DevSecOps. Tell me what that's about.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. There's just a lot of benefits of DevSecOps, and a lot of them that we talk about is, yes, we want to do it faster, right? And yes, we want to do it quicker, and ultimately that all kind of spins back to wanting to do things quicker for the business. But I think ultimately what really is a good outcome of DevSecOps is this concept of sharing security knowledge to the DevOps teams, and also getting better together, right? Like all together we can make something better. It's not the DevOps teams that can do security by themselves. It's not the security teams that can do security by itself. Like we all have to do it together. And when I talk these days about it, I often talk about that when you do DevOps right and DevSecOps correctly, like the security team almost can turn into auditors and advisors, while the DevOps team turns into like the doers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like that collaboration together, I think is kind of one of the unseen benefits of a partnership rather than something that's adversarial.
Well, we will make sure to put a link to this as well as the ESG study that was done. I've read some reports from ESG on some other stuff. They put out really good material. And I'll also put some images out there of how to get to your courses on LinkedIn and stuff. Just share some more information about how to get in touch with you. But thank you so much for being on the show today. We'll have to have you on again. We're going to be reporting a lot more on security over the next year. So I'm really excited and hope to talk to you about this again.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate the time, man.
All right. One of the great things I get to do in my career today is talk with people on camera that I've already known for decades and are actually personal friends of mine, and just have a great conversation. It's always great. And I just can't believe how long it has been. You know, as the great Smash Mouth once sang, the years stop coming and they don't stop coming. Right? So, yeah, time gets away from you. But, we're going to make sure that we have places that you're probably seeing on your screen right now. Tim Chase's profile on LinkedIn and some of the classes that he offers there, as well as we're going to have some links in the show notes about where you can reach out to Tim and see all the great information that he's putting out today. So what do you think about today's show? Are you interested in a career in cybersecurity? I'd love to hear your feedback. Do you want to hear more shows about AppSec and security? Love to know that as well. You can reach me on most social media platforms. If you'll scan that QR code, it'll take you to my bio page, and you can find out all the wonderful places where you can reach me. You can also simply drop me a line through email at heyscott@smcjournal.com. Do you like this kind of content and want to see more? Well, the best thing you can do for me is to hit the like button on this video and subscribe to my channel. The more subscribers I have tells me I'm doing the right thing and I need to create more great content. So we would love to have you as a subscriber. So until next time on the SMC Journal podcast, this is Scott Moore thanking you once again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.